Welcome to another FACEHAMMER faction overview video. We're going to be talking all about Chaos today. Strap yourselves in for a big one. We're going to go through every single Chaos army in Age of Sigmar and talk about why you should or shouldn't collect them. So let's get into Chaos.
It's a biggie, isn't it?
It is a biggie.
Not a small one.
I decided to put them all into one video rather than the order and split them up. Sorry, it's been a while, but we're
not separating them by ear type or anything this time round.
No, I want to get told off that Sylvaneth aren't elves, which technically is true.
Technically, they are a type of flora and fauna.
So let's talk about Chaos. So we've got a lot to cover. We're going to go through every single alliance, sort of, and show you all the models and give us an idea of what they are. The overview is aimed at newer players. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're probably a little bit more switched on to Age of Sigmar match play, which is what our channel's all about. But this video is aimed at starting what army to pick when you start Age of Sigmar, playing Age of Sigmar 3, and let's get into it.
Yeah, people might pick up some stuff that they perhaps didn't expect. And the other thing that I think can happen as a result of this is people might realize, like, oh, that's why this has been happening in my games, or that's why this seems like an issue. You know, it might be news to you that actually your army's really good against cheating. You just didn't realize or something.
Yeah, so we start off, we talk about the big characters and who they are and what they are. And obviously the biggest one in model and in lore is probably Archaon, the Ever-Chosen.
Big boy.
Can go in any of the main Chaos armies. I know I'll get told off by Skaven and Beastmen players now. But any of the main Chaos factions can take Archaon. He's kind of like he is the Ever-Chosen. He basically is the god level character that rules over all of the Chaos faction. He's like the Nagash to the Sigmar, even though Sigmar hides and doesn't actually fight.
Huge. So hefty 840 points or something like that as well.
80, I think.
80, okay. Nearly 50% of a 2,000 point army. He is
at the time of recording, as it fluctuates quite a lot. But he's a big boy. Obviously, he's the Ever-Chosen. He's got all the marks of the gods. So Chaos, there's the 4 main Chaos gods, and then you've got the undivided or undecided faction, as it used to be called. You could argue that the Skaven god is an official one or not. I don't know where the lore is with that. My knowledge is kind of old world a little bit. So
Vince is just his ears have been pricked up now. Yeah. He's just scurrying over to make a comment.
Yeah. So Archaon, he's a slaves to darkness technically, but he can go in Khorne, Tzeentch, Blade, Hedonites, and the other one, which now eludes me.
Nurgle,
that's the one. There's only 4. I thought because my brain's mush because I've been doing these graphics all day.
So good, yeah. There's 4 and Slaves to Darkness as they're kind of unaffiliated, and then some weird ones we'll talk about at the end that are a bit confusing for everyone. Yeah.
And then we've got some more big characters. Now, Chaos, it should be said, has a lot of special characters, particularly Slaanesh. I'm not putting all of them on here. I'm putting the main ones. If you don't have your favorite character shouted out, it's not a personal thing. It's just I had this limited space, and I was like, this will be enough to give you an idea of what they look like and what they're about. So
we got Sigvald, that's all that matters.
Yep, Sigvald the Magnificent and Glutos for Slaanesh. So they're the sort of the mortal side of things. There are lots of demon special characters. So, got Sinessa, Dexessa, Shalaxi, the Mask. There's loads. So I could have done like 5 or 6 panels just on Slaanesh because they've got loads of special characters. And even Shalesk, there's tons. So you've got lots. Sigvald is pretty amazing. Yeah, Glutos is great.
Yeah, solid. I think it's almost mandatory to have one of those 2 in, if not both those 2 in your lists. They add quite a lot to it, and they are kind of hefty, either linchpins or things to be relied on. And you got Scarbrand, the biggie from Khorne, obviously.
Yeah, the tattered, unflying bloodthirster who can do like lots of mortal wounds for his gets angry as he gets hurt, or if he doesn't fight, he gets angry. I used to like
mostly he's angry.
He's mostly angry. It's just levels of hate. It's levels of anger. He's basically Les in a model. So yeah, it's he's pretty cool. He's pretty awesome. I've used him quite a bit. He's fairly fun. I've actually got one behind me. You might be able to see him just in the corner behind my head. But yeah, he's pretty cool. Then we've got Rotigus, which is your named Great Unclean one for Maggotkin of Nurgle. Again, they've got
Argin these days as well.
Yeah, he's very good for his points, but you know, he's like the named demon character. You've also got the there's lots in Nurgle as well. You've obviously got things like
the Porticulous Slimucks.
Yeah, and the Glotkin, and you know, Bloab Rot spawned, and Morbidix twice spawn, and you know, all the rot lords basically. So the Magath lords. So there's a lot in Nurgle as well. Obviously just one on this, but you can explore the range at your leisure. Rotigus is pretty good for a named Great and Clean one. And then we've got the guy that everyone loves to hate, which is Kairos.
He's still Kairos.
Yeah. You're named Lord of Change, and he's got a really cool ability where he can manipulate a dice of your opponents. Very good in magic, can create spawn, change, you know, sort of hits people with damage and changes them to spawn, can cast spells from other casters in your army. Works very well with Archaon in the Tzeentch list and things like that. He's very good. Cool model as well. These are all built from the Greater Demon kits. Unlike Scarbrand, he's got his own kit, but these are like, you could buy a Great Unclean and you could build Rotigus or a Great Unclean, and same with Kairos. It's either a Lord of Change or it's Kairos, and you know, so the Keeper of Secrets is the same Shalaxi or a Keeper. So they're like your named demons.
Last seen in 2018,
and even then it was a heart choice. So yeah, it's is what it is. Now we've got now there is no Beastman dramatis personal because they don't have any. So
nothing's dramatic about Beastman.
There is nothing good about there is no big character for Beastman, despite Kratos looking like one. Yeah. So hopefully
they've not had some character love. I hope they do. The opportunity for just big, evil, weird ass, screwed up monsters is just so good in that range. It's a real missed opportunity. I can't wait for when they land, whenever they do, if they ever do.
We'll see what happens. I'm sure they'll get something at
Fingers crossed.
So you've got Thanquol and Bone Ripper, sort of like hero of legend from the old world. He's a little bit of a strange AOS model, but he's pretty cool. You do have lots of Skaven characters as well, like Deathmaster Snitch and Ikit Claw and Screech Verminkin and things like that. So
well, they've got their own equivalent, and then they've got their Greater Demon kit, and that can be built towards special characters, just like the Lord of Change kit can as well. And they're badass models, really good models.
It's awesome. And then we've got the big man himself, the kind of the guy who wishes he was the Everchosen, which is Be'lakor, the first demon prince. He's
good.
Very good. Able to turn off people's units, stop them doing stuff. He's pretty sweet. He's decent. But he also has his own legion, which we will kind of talk about at the end. And he basically doesn't like Archaon very much, but then his punishment is he has to crown the Everchosen and basically bow to them by the gods. So he's kind of been spurned, whereas like Archaon didn't accept the power of the gods and just kind of kept himself to himself rather than become Be'lakor. So yeah.
All right, fluffy pants.
Yeah, I'll get my lore mixed up with the old world. That's the problem, because Chaos is almost like the old world stuff jammed into AOS, and I personally, this is my own personal opinion, don't feel that Chaos as the kind of the antithesis to order has really been bedded down in the lore enough, and it might have been, I haven't read a lot of it, but they kind of felt a little bit like orcs at the start of AOS, where Blades of Khorne are just like mindless hordes that run across and hit things. And I'm like, isn't that orcs? And I was like, they don't really feel that. For me, it's the insidiousness of chaos has kind of gone, because there wasn't, because normally
the sneaky corruption and
like the taint,
machinations behind the scene,
and the danger of one day they will win. It's like they've already won and they're everywhere, and then they fight amongst themselves, and you're like, okay, so they don't feel as menacing.
They're less sneaky, more.
Apart from Be'lakor, he's a bit sneaky, but
sneaky boy.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my personal opinion. I haven't deep dived in the lore. You can tell me I'm wrong.
Educate us.
Educate me. Tell me what books to read that makes them sound cool. But yeah.
Where are we starting then? Where are we going to kick off?
We'll start with Maggotkin.
Sure.
So these are the followers of Nurgle. Nurgle is the god of hope in one way, but it's also the sort of decay. So not hope, despair. So it's like just decay and rot and kind of atrophy and just like basically just wallowing in your own like misery, basically. But they've kind
happily.
of happily, but
wallowing.
they've got this kind of jaunty, happy Garden of Nurgle kind of feel. So you've got the blurb, which is on the back of the book, which is bloated with unclean might, the Maggotkin spread foulness across the mortal realms. The Maggotkin of Nurgle are legion, their revolting ranks swollen with plague demons, rot bringers, disease slaves to darkness, and the zealous plague monks of the clan Pestilence, wreathed in clouds of droning flies and toxic spores, wielding rusted weapons and bilious magics. The Maggotkin spill over the lands like a tide of filth, corruption and polluting all they touch, until the noxious Garden of Nurgle bursts and bounds the bounds of the mortal realms, the realms of chaos. Sorry, so it's
they think they're nicer than they are, and they're disgusting, but they're wonderful to paint.
Yeah, they kind of revel in the gifts of Nurgle, which are the diseases and buboes and poxes that they get, and they kind of love those, and they kind of make them feel happy. And you have Nurglings, which are very cool. They are very fun. So in terms of like theme, you've got the cycle of corruption, which is they have this wheel of Nurgle in the game that can move, and it gives you buffs. So it's like the wheel of Nurgle is quite a cool. You get this little dial, and you can change it.
Quite powerful as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the wizards can kind of manipulate it, so it's pretty good. Decay and rot. So the whole point is to put like use like mortal wounds, like poison stuff to reduce your armor save. Things like Festus and like Rustfang and things like that. They also have the trees of Nurgle, the feculent gnarls burst from the ground with the bells, which allow you to run and charge. And probably the key rule that most of them have is disgustingly resilient.
After saves, still good, turns out.
Yeah, ward save is a really decent across the army. Pretty much all the demons have it. The mortals don't, but some of them do. Depends what they are. So like there's big droning flies and things like that. So one of the things that Chaos has as a faction, generally, it has summoning, which allows you to summon demons onto the battlefield. So how it works with Nurgle is to do with corruption, and you get corruption through trees and for being in their territory and kind of just existing on the board.
It's not one of the more over-the-top summoning ones, is it? You kind of have to put some effort into building up ahead of steam as early as possible, and then you kind of benefit from it more towards the end. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and your opponent can shut it down fairly easy if they camp where your trees are. So you've got this dichotomy of choice where you want your trees to be in a position to run and charge as a platform to launch an attack, but you also want them in a place where the opponent's not going to stand on them, because that stops you getting corruption. So it's kind of like you have to play that game. From a gameplay point of view, resilient, it's in the key clues in the name, they're tough, right?
Yeah,
they hang around.
Super tough.
They've also got a lot of synergies and combos, particularly with the changes that came in the Broken Realm series with the Sloppity Bile Piper and the Scrivener. So they do have some additional rules on top of the battle tome. So you need to like be aware of that as a new player.
Only bonuses though, right? Things just got better basically.
Yeah. You can check the new War Scrolls out on the GW website. So if you go on and go to any listing and you go down the bottom, it says for tab, it says downloads. If you go to that tab, there'll be a link to a PDF. They're quite well hidden, but that gives you the rules. And I think they're available on the app as well if that comes out, because obviously Warhammer Plus is coming soon and then the app's tied into that. So, and I've sort of put unreliable but powerful magic.
Yeah, because they don't particularly have access to many bonuses to cast, and a lot of their stuff is cast on like 7s.
Yeah, because 7's the number of Nurgle.
So you're 50-50 and
yeah, slightly better, but basically, yeah, it's a, and some of the spells make the difference between a unit being able
incredible.
Yeah, the sort of the ramp up on the power is insane. You've got like the noxious mortal wound breath and healing of the Great and Clean one. You've got the exploding mortal wound attacks from, you've got the debuffs. They're just really powerful. But the spells are really good.
Rotigus being able to affect 3 or 4 things very easily on a table with unlimited range, again on a 7. And
they've got that mortal wound defense because they've got that disgustingly resilient save. They also have minuses to shooting as well from Cloud of Flies on the Plague Bearers and things like that. So
badass battle line is something I would have put in here. They're just solid, aren't they? As an army, but Plague Bearers, you could turn up if you wished with basically nothing but Plague Bearers and things to buff or heal your Plague Bearers, or be synergistic with them, and that is an absolutely fine army. Like, Plague Bearers are great for their points, and they just are dependable as all hell.
Yeah, they're very good. And even the Blight Lords, the Putrid Blight Kings, they are really good. They got lots of wounds, good armor save, and then they have like exploding attacks. So
do a number on chaff, can't they? They can go in and just 5 guys can go in and kill 20 crap things really quick. Yeah.
So in terms of my like radial diagram of power, I've got this, I don't know, I've had a thing pop up on my screen that I can't get rid of.
Okay, we've got objective capture maxed out, which is not really surprising. One of the weird things about Nurgle is they shouldn't be fast in the rules, but they really, really are.
Yeah.
So, thematically, they're this army that when it gets there, finally, all pustules and snail trails, they have snails. Snails are not meant to be fast. When they get there,
I've seen them getting on my rhubarb. They're pretty quick.
Old snails and flies and buzzing and snail trails and all that. When they get there, they are hard to shift, but thanks to Run and Charge and the trees and the bell from the Great Unclean One, and possibly a couple of other things, they really can get there super, super, super quick. And kind of one of the solid strategies is to just plonk your dudes on the objectives as fast as possible, as soon as possible, and, your opponent could try and get through them, and that is not an easy task. Like, there are very few things in the game that can get rid of 30 Plague Bearers quickly, especially if that thing happens to be re-rolling at 6s to hit or minus whatevers from the spell or any other stuff that's going on, or being stopped from being piling in. They are really, really good at getting somewhere and just being like, well, this is mine, and maybe getting it turn 5.
Yeah, and with the wheel you can get plus move, and with the bell gives you plus move as well, and you can get Run and Charge off the tree, so you can get very quick. Melee, they're okay. They kind of rely on their spells to do damage. They kind of grind, or they're spiky. You have to, it depends what you roll. If you roll lots of 6s, you're okay.
Yeah, Great Unclean Ones can be okay, but they tend to take a bit of item or command ability or spell buffing to get them there. They're not Scarbrand, that's for sure though.
No, and they don't really shoot. They got a little bit. You could get these blighted heads and stuff, but
you've got access to the pestilence stuff, but it's not crazy good, is it?
No. Model wise, they're beautiful.
Oh, that's so good.
I actually struggled to fit a good selection. I ended up putting a lot of Maggot Lords on there, So because I was like, I've put the Blight Kings on there, and I got the Puskor Blight Lords, and I've got Bloab, who's my favorite, and then I got the Scrivener, the Bile Piper. But like, they've got so many good models. They're very beginner friendly.
I think people look at them and assume that it's worse than it is, but actually you can treat a lot of a Nurgle model, generally speaking. You know, I know there's a character up there, ignore him, characters are special, but generally speaking, you can treat the majority of a Nurgle model in exactly the same way and then add details. You can do a lot with washes. Russ has done a lot with washes on his. It's a great effect. And the assembly is not too bad either, generally, throughout the range, I would say.
No. And like, basically, messy paint jobs look good. And then you can tidy up paint jobs with the Nurgle's Rot technical paint, with Blood for the Blood God, with Rust, with weathering powders, like just washes. They dry brush really nicely. They're just a great army to build and paint. They're elites. You don't need that many. So it's a great army from a modeling point of view.
Yeah, I like frequently. Highly recommended one for people's first army if they're into the aesthetic or the idea of it. You know, like super solid. Maybe you don't get to learn much about shooting. Aside from that, not many other huge issues there with them.
No, and they do have a few shooting attacks, but it's to be honest, like, there's not a lot to learn with shooting. Point and click a little bit. So it's I think they're a great army for newer players. Quite cheap to get hold of as well.
Yeah, and really easy to like good start collecting, you know, the considerations like that, and really easy to, you can change out 300 points conveniently and fast and end up fiddling with your list and having loads of fun at that. You know, change your spells, different, great unclean ones, named or otherwise, or monsters, yes or no. I think they're a proper, they've always been a collector's force, haven't they? I don't think that's ever changed. And
no.
They're pretty solid in the game as well, so just a bonus.
Yep, they're super good. Big fan of Nurgle.
So segue.
Hedonites of Slaanesh.
So perfect beginner army. These are the Lumineth of Chaos without any of the power to back it up, right?
yeah, we're gonna get heat for that now. So the Hedonites of Slaanesh. So they revel in the vilest acts and most stimulating sensory excesses. The battlefields of the mortal realms provide an abundance of both to indulge in. Empowered by depravity and addicted to the most extreme pain and pleasure imaginable, the servants of Slaanesh are a scourge on the realms. When the hosts of the Dark Prince go to war, preening mortal warriors stride forth alongside cruel Quicksilver demons, tearing apart their beguiled foes with ecstatic abandon.
That sounds really exciting. They must be badass on the table.
Sounds amazing. Do you need the previous book to get that feeling?
Yeah.
No. I guess like you're into feeling like the frustration. Like this is like the frustrated. No, we'll talk. We've done a lot of Slaanesh videos. If you want to know what we're talking about, basically, they're in a little bit of a bad spot from a match play point of view.
On multiple levels, yeah. They're pretty techy to play with. They are the definition of glass cannons. If we don't go outside the books to the allies, at least, and we exclude the one model of Rotigus, they're not particularly resilient. They can hit pretty hard, but other stuff does it better. And just the icing on the cake is they are pointed fairly aggressively currently, hopefully, and that should change at some point, because I don't think anyone thinks that they are anything but slightly overpointed. So hopefully at some point that is addressed. Theme phrases that Ross popped down was depravity, excess of violence, lithe and swift, and deadly precision. So they're a scalpel blade, aren't they? Basically, you need to get it at the right point, cut the right bits, step back, let your opponents die, and then pick the next one.
Get it in and wiggle it about a bit. But yeah. So I think, like, from a gameplay, you've also got summoning. Their summoning's quite powerful. Depravity is powerful, but it's technical as well.
It's also a turn delayed. I think you don't get to generate it in your magic phase and then make the most of it in your movement phase. For example, you've got to wait. You accrue your points at the end of the turn, and then you can spend them in your next movement phase. So there is kind of this half or 1.5 turn delay depending on the priority roll, which can sometimes feel a pretty difficult thing to negotiate.
Yeah, and like it's you get it by not killing stuff, but by hurting things or being hurt.
Yeah.
So you're not having a very resilient army doesn't really lend to it. They do have some units which can be resilient, but they're not really as good. And they took a hit with the FAQs for AOS3 with things like the changes to warriors, with the coalition rules, and the changes to myrmidons, which stops you re-rolling your save. It's only a +1 now. So they've got, we won't get into too much detail, but they are fragile and fast. They've got very good heroes. Their heroes are very good. Their unique characters are very powerful. And they do have a lot of synergy. You just can't get a lot of it in your list because they're expensive.
Yeah, you'll find your armies feeling fairly small. Even if your objective was to fit as many things in as possible, you'd still really struggle in comparison to a lot of other armies. So you might feel basically at the point at which you finish your 2,000 points that you would like one more battle line unit or one more hero or something like that. Fairly frequently, and looking at an opponent's army, like an average one, you might feel there's a little bit of a things don't quite match up.
No, and I think the only way is up from here.
I hope so.
We hope.
Very biased, but absolutely hope so.
And in terms of the radar of power, I could have probably adjusted this a little bit now. Like objective capture might be lower. It might be a 2 rather than a 3, and melee power might be a 4 rather than a 3.
Maybe, yeah. I could see it either way, though. Like, they can get there. They can, with summoning as well, you can put a wall of people behind things, or you can run forwards and then summon guys to sit on your stuff behind you quite safely around the Fane of Slaanesh, which is their scenery piece. So I think that one, you could argue for either. But, yeah.
They're sort of averagely in the middle, but because of the cost, you kind of don't get enough to be average at. So you feel weaker than you probably are. Shooting as well is average. Yeah,
their 4 for melee power would be against crap as well, whereas when you're against elite stuff, it really drops off very aggressively. So I think 3 is fair.
Well, they've got access to really good combat units, but they're not resilient, so they die, so they don't always get to swing, and you don't get enough of them in your list, so you don't get to roll dice. So it's like if they could survive and hit you,
tantalizing,
good. Yeah,
appropriately Slaanesh.
It's that very that temptation of what you might get, what you might have won. Probably not Warhammer, but
they got more shooting than most chaos.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
and it's all right.
It's okay. It's good for depravity generation because you can chip away. It's important. Yeah. It almost feels like a tax, though. It feels like you've got to put shooting in to get depravity to make your army not feel overpointed, but none of it. But I'd rather just have better units and pay and not bother about the shooting. Yeah,
they've got a pretty wide open allies pool, so you can get in, or with the coalition stuff, you can get in Beasts of Chaos if you want some cheap Ungor Raiders for some shots, because it doesn't have to be a Slaanesh unit that shoots. Importantly, you can generate it like that. You could pop Rotigus in, you already mentioned him, and you could affect people at range with his spell or something. So there are other ways to get it there, but it's.
I think it's key to say you've got to make Slaanesh. We're talking about match play, or like if you're playing in a semi-competitive club environment, you need to go outside the battle tome to make them worth putting on the table, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think in a very, very fighty, combatty melee local meta, maybe they wouldn't feel as bad. But if you turn up and some opponents have got some techie shooting armies or whatever, there's a really good chance that quite a lot of your stuff has died before it got there, or particularly resilient armies just sometimes feel really like a hard thing to get through.
Yeah, and that brings us on to the models. So the models are exceptional.
Exquisite. Yeah,
but
go for it.
They are
first before I upset someone.
They are very difficult for newer hobbyists in terms of assembly and painting.
They're bloody shit. They're awful for it. They are absolutely dreadful. Like they are.
It depends on the model. If you're mostly demons and stuff like, it's not too bad. But if you start going into the mortal stuff, like the Blissbarb Archers are probably one of the worst kits I've had to assemble.
Agreed. I bought 2 boxes. They were both opened. No, both opened, and I still just bought demonettes and found some other arms to put on them. Yeah.
I
wonderful warband potential, like building and
love what
painting
they
5 of
look like.
those.
They look great.
They're amazing. Each one is a character.
I spent an entire day building 1 unit of bliss barbs. Now,
I'm not surprised at all.
I would say that obviously I'm sort of doing it to sort of quite a high level, so I'm sanding off every mold line and stuff like that. But they were a nightmare.
You still break them otherwise. They've got a lot of thin, pointy bits. This goes to the entire army in general. You know, there's whips everywhere. There's hair flowing. There's spikes. There's peacock little bits. If you're playing with a woolly jumper and you put your arm down over a Slaanesh arm, you bring it up and you got like 17 puppets on each sleeve.
Yeah, they are on the fragile side of things. They almost feel like an elf army in that regard. I guess it's because they're live and small and spiky and
time consuming as well. Even if you're not removing seal lines or something, like building 3 Fiends of Slaanesh is a pretty, you know, it's an evening somehow. God knows how. So yeah, they are absolutely beautiful though. So at the point at which, you know, you've taken a year to assemble your army, my God, it is one of the coolest ranges available now. And I think without fanboying too much to flip flop from one side of things to the other, in terms of taking a beloved aesthetic and modernizing it, GW have knocked it absolutely out the park. Like Sigvald is a perfect example. And some of them are great. Sigvald is a joy in every respect to build, paint, and play. You know, he's one of the best things they've ever done without offending people who love the old one and, you know, making it out of plastic and stuff like that. So gorgeous. If you're really into it, you won't mind, but just be prepared for a bit more time to sink into to the building and then the painting. If you've chosen particularly, you know, less of the demons or the less heavily armored mortals, there are, however, if people want tips, just pop some questions below. There are lists you can build that are about, you know, they'll take a quarter of the time to assemble and paint to a high level that an average list would. You just have to go down a certain direction with certain units or maybe some coalition things or stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, caveat it with always do the models you love, because if you love what you love the models, you're not going to worry about how many hours and minutes you spend on them. So
I'm collecting them. I just bagged on them, but I'm collecting them. And I built a load of them as well, which is
unusual for you. But yeah, Slaanesh, great looking, not particularly beginner friendly, books in a bit of a bad state, technical to use, difficult, but if you love them, you love them. So
yeah, and you'll never get bored of them if you do love them. The book is wide open. There are loads of different builds. None of them are, you know, crazy good, but they're all really interesting to play if it turns out that the army suits you and you like it.
Blades of Khorne.
All right, then, from my love to your love. Although you've not used these guys for a bit. These used to be your boys, didn't they? For
not
an extended
really.
Time.
They were my stopgap while I waited for something to come out that I enjoyed.
Okay.
And I'm just being honest. Like I
fine.
got the starter set. We had the Bloodbound and the Stormcast, and I dry brushed up my Bloodbound, and they ended up becoming a huge army with demons, mortals, Archaon, everything, and it just grew to the point where I've got like 5 Bloodthirsters and
a lot of change even got there and stuff.
And Warp Lightning Cannons. Yeah, although I sold those now, that's all gone. But you know, so it was the old Finecast one from the, you know. But anyway, Blades of Khorne. So all dread the coming of the Blades of Khorne, unless you've got armor. Sorry. Savage howls rise above the brazen war horns and horrifying chants demanding blood and skulls. Manifestations of primal rage and relentless bloodlust. I don't know what that's meant to say, but that's not right. The saying, and mortal followers of the demon and mortal followers of the Lord of Battle surge forward like an unstoppable red tide. Cruel axes and jagged blades lash out to hew limbs, lop off heads, and send showers of gore splattering across the battlefield. Only slaughter, the destruction of hated sorcerers, and the skulls of champions are tributes worthy of mighty Khorne's favour.
Killing stuff.
Go and hit it and kill it and get blood and skulls, and we don't care whose it is. It could be ours, it could be theirs. We don't care. They sound like a very mindless horde of violence, and actually, from a playing point of view, they are a bit more technical than they appear.
You had this with Iron Jaws too, didn't you? It tends to be a hallmark of the melee armies. If you want to do well with something that can't shoot and can't really magic, then you probably have to play quite well. Yep,
funny that. So theme phrases, we've got the Blood Tithe, which is their summoning mechanic / power-up mechanic.
Yeah, you get some kind of out of sequence actions and stuff like that. It's quite powerful, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's fun. I think it's
good.
one of the really. I quite like all of the armies individual things, but I think this is one of the best realized ones, in my opinion.
So you either spend it to summon demons, or you use it for impactful power-ups like moving or attacking the hero phase, or making
Charging in your opponent's turn. Can you?
I'm not sure. I think
maybe a movement. There's some good stuff in there.
I think that's a command ability on the Juggernaut guy, but yeah. So there's lots of cool stuff you can do. Then you've got I've put the generic Khorne phrases, so skulls for the skull throne, blood for the blood god, and he cares not where the blood flows. So just to give you an idea that it's all about skulls and smashing, and they don't like wizards as well, which is probably
no, they don't. Good anti-magic, yeah. They're quite a martial planned regimental force. I know it sounds like it should be a bit mad and all over the place and just crazy, doesn't it? But you have to think about where things are and have heroes close by to, all the armies, have to have heroes close by to do command abilities and stuff like that. But because of the lack of shooting and magic, it really matters about having this next to that, so this thing can do that extra thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think the synergy, like in terms of gameplay, they're a combat army, obviously. I don't really have any shooting. Their combat's a bit like lots of dice, not a lot happens if you play mortals, and if you play
old school
demons, it's like mortal wounds and bloodthirsters can be impactful.
Yeah,
but the summoning
under a bargain. Can we just shout wow? Like you can put 4 bloodthirsters in an army and you barely spent half your army's points.
Yeah, well, you would have, but just about.
Yeah,
it's like they're 280, I think, something like that. So,
yeah.
Obviously, like synergy is really high. You've got like the Bloodsecrator banner gives you +1 attack. You've got like the prayers of the priests in the army, and you've got all the characters have all got these really impactful command abilities that can be used. I think like all the demons have got, all the bloodthirsters have got different command abilities, like pile in from 6 away or fight twice if you play Reapers and stuff like that. So I think I tend to, when I write Khorne lists, I fill up all 6 hero slots and I run out of heroes.
I was just going to say, because you get baby ones as well that are also quite cool. Quite frequently you're spoiled for choice entirely, a bit like Stormcast.
Yes, yeah, entirely like that. Lots of combos and the power-ups we've talked about. So they're a bit of an unusual army because they've got melee power, but it's sporadic in terms of is it good or is it bad. Some stuff just rolls loads of dice with no rend, and actually ironically that's almost better now because rend doesn't matter. And then they're okay on objectives. It depends how you build your list. If you build lots of blood warriors and juggernauts, they're quite good. But then you're not really doing much damage. If you take like bloodthirsters and bloodletters and blood reavers, you're not very resilient, but you do more damage. It's kind of that flip flop. No shooting, really. Don't have it. They've got skull cannons, but you might as well not bother.
Quite easy to get enough stuff in an army, I'd say, with Khorne, isn't it? Like you can put quite a lot of different aspects.
They're basically a horde army, but they shouldn't be. They don't feel
because because you don't have to spend points on wizards. You don't have to spend points on shooting, and both of those things cost more points because of having shooting or being a wizard. And some of them are just not like they're undercosted or whatever, but some of them do feel distinctly like bargains. And there's loads of different ways to build a list. You can have tons of crap, and when it dies, get blood tithe, or you can rock up with Archaon, of course, because Archaon can go in everything, and like a couple of other things to go in a completely different direction.
Yeah, and if you just get a big horde of blood warriors, I think they're minimum size 10, so you can have 30 blood warriors. That's 60 wounds in one unit.
Quarter of your points.
Pretty resilient, but you didn't get to go anywhere.
No.
But they're infantry, so the mobility is kind of on the slow side. Even the bloodthirster only movement 10. So it's slow. But very cool. They've got a really good range of models.
Quite affordable as well, I think.
You should be a lot available online because they were in the starter set. They've had like a couple books. They've got loads of heroes. They did like the Gore Chosen game where you got all the 4 heroes. So there's a lot of them kicking around. I think you got a sort of priest with a white dwarf at one point, and you've got there's got
a couple of start collectings that are relevant as well.
Yeah, and like you've got like the sort of stuff. So there's a big range of stuff. Cool models.
You don't have to buy trees or anything either.
No, you have to buy a skull altar, but it's sort of it's one
awesome
off. It is cool. And it's very good as well. And you probably want to. The start collector's got the blood secretor, the blood stoker, all that stuff is pretty much you're gonna need that stuff. So it's worth getting. You can do all demons, you can do all mortals. It's a bit like all the armies that with all these god specific ones can. I find the models from a painting point of view, if you're trying to paint them in properly, you can tell by the pictures they're quite detailed.
Yeah.
So they've got straps and skulls and brass edging on red armor, and they're really intricate models. That's why I dry brushed mine and put blood on them, because it
very comparable to the Slaanesh in that if you're going all demon, pretty damn good, and if you're going all mortal, quite a bit more faffy.
Yeah. And the demons are easy to paint, so like the flesh hounds and bloodletters.
Yeah.
Just assembly on the bloodletters is not ideal, but it's an old kit, so pretty much all plastic, massive range. Good for beginners, in my opinion.
Not as fiddly or as fragile as Slaanesh by a long,
chunkier.
a long way. Chunky
Lots
and
of spikes though, which really wreck your brushes if you dry brush them.
Yeah, their spikes don't break though; they break you.
Yeah, they just rip your brush to bits. So there was a Series D incident I had where I kind of realised that Blood Warriors, like, obviously rolled a 6 for their Gore Fist save against my brush, and I should have realised how I was using it that I was going to wreck my brush, but I didn't. So anyway, cool army, good models, okay rules. I'd say they're sort of semi-competitive, but they're hard to use to be competitive if you play them. But they're
an army to grow with and learn with, aren't they? Right, you need to kind of stick it out for the duration with them.
They're a good, they're a good learning army, I would say. You start off, and then you're going to get rewarded the more time you invest into practicing with them.
Potential to properly pull the rug out from top tier armies, though. I think they've always had that going on for the people who are willing to stick with them and put in the dedication. They can really surprise people. I
had a lot of success with them. Like most of my I mean, and to be honest, like I would say that I haven't touched them or played with them a lot recently. But back in AOS 1 and into AOS 2. There was a lot of potential, and people, they're kind of under the radar a little bit. Like people don't. They always do.
People just assume they're a blunt instrument, don't they? Always.
You catch so many people out with little tricks like pulling their characters with the get over here, from the priest with the Rafax or the blood boil from the altar and stuff like that. So there's can't, a lot of that you can't do anymore. But it was.
You've got internet rage, bloodthirst. Are always potential to ruin someone's day with
Khorne.
Yeah, 8 mortal wounds and AOE. It's unique.
Yeah, and like lots of ways to buff attacks. So you can get Scarbrand up to multiple attacks, 3 attacks on his 8 mortal wound axe. And if you roll a 6, it does 16. So I did 40 mortal wounds to a unit half guard, which was very fun.
Solid. Good allies pool as well. Worth mentioning. Like really good pool of models to pull from to kind of like your weaknesses. If you are looking to round out the force a bit.
And their antithesis is Slaanesh, isn't it? So they can't have Slaanesh units. But we should say the gods, they're diametrically opposed. So like Slaanesh can't have Khorne units, and Nurgle can't have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch can't have Nurgle. So,
but that does mean that Khorne can have Nurgle and can have Tzeentch.
Can have the good ones, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's
sorry.
It's okay.
What I was no Khorne Demon Prince for Slaanesh. Sorry. No Bloodstick Ground, which would be amazing. But there you go. So then, Disciples of Tzeentch. The change bringers. So the opposite of Khorne being all like anti-magic, these are all super magic. So the air screams and the lands rive. The disciples have come to wreak deadly change magic upon all who would deny them. The disciples of Tzeentch take a great many forms, from the Archaonite cultists to hosts of gibbering demons. Amongst their chanting ranks are the bird-headed beastmen, horned monstrosity, and many-eyed seers, all determined to capsize the reality of the mortal realms. Even the lowliest of their number has magical talent. To face them in battle is to face a barrage of lethal spells, fatal transmutations, and raw chaos.
They're like changing stuff.
They are the hope, which is why they're antithesis to Nurgle, because Nurgle is about sitting in your situation of your disease, in your moment, and not getting out of it. It's the despair. And Disciples at Tzeentch is about change, so change is hope. So that's why they're antithesis, where you might think Khorne and Tzeentch might be. And I've got all the Liber Chaotica books of old, where it goes through into much more detail of the sort of the pantheon of chaos, which is really interesting if you can get hold of that.
Meister Rustfield strikes again.
So those days are long gone. That was when I used to work at the company, so I had a lot of time looking at these stuff in the day. So then you've got your theme phrases. So Eldritch power, so lots of spell power. I've put Masters of Destiny, which is the rule about Destiny dice, which is the thing that Byron hates, and most people who play against them hate.
It's perfect, but it's just too good.
You get 9 dice, you roll them before the game, and you can use them to substitute rolls during the game.
So if you rolled a few 6s, you can save them for really important armor saves, and if you rolled a couple of 1s, you can save them for really important pop tests. So basically you get to ignore probability because of your ability to predict the future in terms of the fluff. And it's really good.
Yeah, it's really strong for competitive play because you're removing variables and you can plan. And Tzeentch is all
being
about
able to bank on a 1 in 6 odders.
Yeah. And you can play your turn like, I'm going to get my double 6 charge because I've got 2 6s, so I'm just going to use those. So I know I'm going to do it. So you can use your Destiny dice to do stuff in the game where in another army you'd go, I might get a big charge here, or I might roll the double 6 to put someone in the Sword of Archaon, or I might, make the run roll to get the objective. You go, no, I will. I just use this dice. And I can know I've got it because I've already can see what the results are. It's not like you roll a dice and you get to swap it. It's not a re-roll. Personally, it would be cool if they were re-rolls because the whole thing about like Tzeentch is that it's fickle. Fate's fickle. There's nothing fickle about this.
Or you get to use them on a 4-up or something properly.
Yeah, maybe.
I can get a 6 if I want, but it's super good. Really, really good. And as a result, can be more forgiving than you'd think. If you don't protect your Lord of Change and someone gets in there with some, 5 damage, Ren 2 attacks, and you got a 4-up save, you can be like, okay, well, I got 2 6s, so I'm just not going to risk that. I saved them. I'm fine. I'm alive, and I can run away next turn or something.
And I love resource management, like in the game. Like that's why I like Relentless Discipline. Obviously now everyone's got it sort of better, but anyway. And I love like the Blood Tithe. I love resource management. The problem I have with Tzeentch is the stigma of playing Tzeentch. So like to do well with Tzeentch, you have to play in a certain way, which isn't necessarily that much fun for your opponent, which we'll talk about when we talk about more about the overview at the end.
And then they just tell you that you didn't have to use probability anyway.
Even if you, but the worst thing is if you take a softer list or you use one that isn't that bad, people don't know the army well enough to know that. They just go, I lost to Tzeentch, and it just becomes a thing. It's not as bad as it used to be.
You can build any type of list though and still have a chance, which is the plus of the stronger ones if played well.
Maybe I don't know. I don't think the Archonites are still left in their box covering dust. So Locus of Change is a really they've got the demons. They've all got a locus. So every demon has a locus. So like they've all got these special rules. So the sort of this one is minuses to hit. Whereas like the Slaanesh one get bonus attacks and exploding attacks, that kind of thing. So they get and then they get to remove the charges. You can stop you piling in, basically. So they've all got these locusts around the demons, and they've also got agendas of anarchy, which are the gifts of change. So you have missions. You pick a mission, you do the mission, you get a bonus. But of course, like the mission could be guaranteed by using your Destiny dice, and then you double bubble, and so they're actually quite a technical army to use.
Lots to remember.
Lots to do. Lots of
while
planning.
Playing with them, yeah.
Lots of planning, lots of resource management, lots of magic. So you've got a lot of hero phase management, a lot of stuff like that. So summoning is all based off your magic. So every time you cast a spell, you get a fate point. Every time that your opponent casts a spell successfully, I should add, you get a fate point. They're used to summon demons. They got very powerful spells, very powerful casters. They are super reliable because of the Destiny dice and some of their special rules.
Also, they got things like when a lot of change casts, you match the out your 2d6 to cast a spell, you match your lowest dice to your highest dice. So if you roll a 5 and a 1, you rolled a 10, you didn't roll a 6.
Yeah, exactly. And they've
plenty
got
of bonuses as well and all that type of stuff.
Yes, and they got lots of synergy, which is the good thing. You've got your for example, even your Enlightened or Zangor and your Zangor Shaman buffs them, and you got lots of synergy in the army.
Yeah.
So melee power, they're like, yeah, you still get access to coalition units, so you can have some melee power.
And they had some units that used to be a bit more sexy than they are now as well, didn't they? In the the Zangor on discs.
Yeah, Enlightened on discs are good. Zangor on foot were good. They're a little bit less good now. You're generally not going into much melee power, but they've got quite a high resilience objective power score, and that's purely because of Pink Horrors. So they've got
also getting to pick your ones for you. You can be like, well, I know I'm gonna that's a -4 test on an important unit. Cool, here's a 2. Yeah.
And with the Pink Horrors, they've got split and split again. So you kill a Pink Horror, splits into blues. You kill a Blue Horror, splits into brimstones. So a 10-man unit is 50, 60 wounds worth of models.
Oh, the cheapest wounds in the game, and they're a wizard, and they have multiple 18-inch range shooting attacks.
Yeah. They're just, horrors are just obnoxious.
Horrible.
So the army's got a lot of shooting with stuff like flamers, horrors, all
the different types as well.
Skyfires.
Yeah, you've got some super long range elite, and then you've got some more medium range, still scary with the flamers, and then you've just got a barrage of crap from the horrors, which is not to be underestimated at all, because it's a really good way to clear screens, or just wait.
Even the acolytes shoot. Don't forget the acolytes. We see them everywhere. I know they're used in some competitive lists, but they're only because they're cheap. But I really like the acolytes, by the way. It's just my favorite models. So you're restricted in. You've got a good choice of shooting, which is good. You say long range mortals from the Skyfires, things like that. So it's great. So they're kind of in the middle for me for shooting, because they don't quite have that X factor like Sentinels and things like that. But
and also, if you want to make their shooting better, often it dictates taking your entire list in that direction with the
your covered, which is So you're going into that flame host, or you're going into those kind of you're weakening your
Host Arcanum or whatever. It is.
And prayer and spell power. Well, spell power is great. It's off the chart, really. Not the most mobile, but they do have some really mobile units.
Yeah.
Screamers,
quite a lot of flying and stuff like that.
So the Zangor are very fast. So it depends how you build your list. They can be mobile. They don't have a lot of gotcha mobility, like teleporting or coming on from the edges or anything like that. So a little bit summoning as well. You can do stuff, but I mean, it depends on your list, I think.
So remember anything that's got people playing it. Remember any of your stuff that's got run and charge, that just got way better, because your runs and your charges can be like, I'm just going to use that. I'll use that 4 for that run, because then that means that I can use this 5, and it doesn't matter what my other dice is for my charge or something like that. So,
and if you've got Kairos, you can negate their run or charge or roll, because he can just say, nah, you're not having it. So
some of the best command abilities in the game as well in that book. Some ridiculous efficiency. Like, I'm going to spend this one thing, and everyone within 9 is re-rolling all hits until my next hero phase. Some really strong stuff. I'd say for everything that we've said, they aren't hugely forgiving to play with. In terms of their like you can make up for mistakes, but you can only do that as many times as you have fate dice. Cool, I'll protect him. But if someone gets in whole scale to one of your units, they're often going to get munched unless it's horrors, basically.
They're an army that they're a bit of a weird one, because they're really powerful when used correctly, but all used to good effect with good fate dice. But if you have bad fate roll, or you don't manage that properly, or you don't, they're a hard army, I think, to consistently do well with. Tzeentch Archaon list aside, because that's a different thing. Just one of the top lists in AOS at the moment. Hot take. In terms of models, beautiful, lots of nice blues and golds, Egyptian kind of look. I mean, the Gaunt Summoner I just think is amazing.
Yeah, loads of variety as well.
Yeah, Zangor and horrors, and you can do an easy army with demons because they are quite easy to assemble and paint. They dry brush really nicely. The Zangor and the Arcanite type stuff is a little bit more complex.
Yeah, again, they're comparable, aren't they? Same kind of aesthetic as the Bliss Barbs or the Mortal Khorne. They're like high quality warband / character level detail on pretty much.
It was kind of like the start of when models started to get this complex.
Yeah.
But they are beautiful. Big range as well. You've got all the demons, all the mortals, got all the characters. Obviously all the slaves to darkness and all the beastmen, which we'll get onto in a bit.
Yeah. I like wide open. You could play the army for 5 years and change it by 400 points every game.
And it's kind of like true of most of the Chaos factions. It's just how beginner friendly are they? They're probably less beginner friendly than Khorne and Nurgle, but more than Slaanesh, I'd say.
I agree. So also, I think maybe you don't learn in the same way with them that you do with others because of the fate dice. Like they're both unforgiving, and you've got something to get you out the worst bits, which maybe isn't the best learning.
I think it promotes you to be sloppy.
And then you get really frustrated when you can't fix it.
Because I think as well, like you burn through your resource because you're like, I don't need to try and give me the best chance. But then there are times when that play of making sure you're engineering the best odds is really important to master that. So it's if you have to do it, then you
perhaps you don't. Yeah, probability management. Maybe it's a bit more difficult to learn when you don't have to always.
No, I mean, I know it's a limited resource, and I know there's Tzeentch players out there would be saying that it's not harder than, and it is. I'm not saying it's easy to use, and it requires a bit of a knowledge of the game, like that kind of planning ahead mentality.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're the kind of guy that likes to math it out, you're the Feria, then this is quite a good army for you.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a slightly more anally retentive, like planning, knowing all your options, researching the living hell out of it, and then turning up and executing some plans or plays almost. Yeah,
you have a playbook, but I would say that you can get analysis paralysis a little bit with Tzeentch. So
yeah,
it's a thing.
And can your opponents? That's the thing as well. They slow down opponents a lot.
Yeah, because there's so many options and things they have to consider. It can create a very slow-paced game.
Right then. So from the techiest of the tech with loads of crazy magic stuff to dudes in armor,
slaves to darkness. So these are the kind of the generic warriors. So they're devout.
In a classic fantasy sense, heavily armored, horns on helmets.
This is the Conan the Barbarian dudes it's but devout worshippers of chaos, the slaves to darkness bring war to the tortured lands of the mortal realms. The innumerable allegiance of tribes and warrior bands who fight ceaselessly to gain favor of the dark gods. The slaves to darkness seek to conquer and despoil in the name of the gods. Great champions lead their tribal armies in pursuit of power and glory. At their side walk demonic warlords and terrible monsters, each a living conduit for the powers of chaos. Sounds cool.
Does sound cool. It's classic, isn't it?
Yeah, these are my favourite from the old world that was the kind of the favourite aesthetic of these armoured warriors just marching to war and just utterly lost to this, to try, utterly given over to chaos. They're a bit weird now because they've kind of won. So what are they doing? I struggle a little bit with the chaos lore in AOS. Now that the order factions are started to get a foothold and stuff, you can kind of start to feel it come back again.
They've got a resurgence due, possibly.
Yeah. Sort of themey wise, you've got dark champions. They got like their heroes have marks, and their mark of chaos give them an aura which keys off other units with marks. So that's kind of like you can mix it in your army. So you could have some Khorne, some Tzeentch, some Nurgle, but you only, your ability will key off the same mark. So if you're a Khorne hero, then a unit of Khorne within a range, and if you're the general, it's a bigger range. It does more of effect. You've got the Favour of the Gods, so when you kill monsters and heroes, you get the Eye of the Gods table, which is one of my favourite things from back in the day. You roll on it, you get a bonus or a boon or a curse. You get turned into a spawn, or you get demonhood, it's really cool. It's really fun. It's easy to forget about it, but it's a really fun mechanic. If you're playing club level, you can do lots of cool stuff where you're trying to just get your guy up to be a demon prince and stuff like that. There's a lot to be done with that. It's a lot of fun. So they've got the marks and the violence and the Eye of the Gods. So it's basically like that's the kind of thing. They are armored, resilient, elite, and it's customizable. It's kind of the gameplay stuff. So
yeah, like an implacable advance, basically, isn't it? Dudes in armor going there and being elite, essentially.
Yeah, and the army's got loads of wiggle room around the edges. All the Warcry warbands sit in here along with the Ogroid stuff, and you've got like war shrines, and you can have like, you can choose your army to be like despoilers, so it's more demon prince focused, and then you could corrupt the terrain, or you can go into more like Cabalists or idolaters and more chariot focused. So
we've also got on foot, mounted chariots, mega elite with a Vanguard.
Yeah. And obviously Archaon it fits in here. If you go Everchosen, and Vanguard become Battle Line, and you get bonuses. So I think it's a great book from begin. If you stay within, and what's really good about it, it gives you a load of models you can use in other Chaos armies.
Yeah, it does.
So if you want to branch straight into like Tzeentch, you could already use your Vanguard, your Archaon, and just add like some horrors and things like that, and then just change the battle tone book. Yeah. And if you paint them in a generic way, they could be used in Khorne, in Slaanesh, and it's very easy to grow your collection into any of the 4 other main god factions from the Slaves book.
Particularly if you're not going towards Nurgle as well, a load of the stuff, just super solid battle line. Things like Chaos Knights are fantastic, I think. But the Warriors, even Marauders, they're just a great option in a load of different armies, and have been used widely since AOS began as a way to just plug gaps, or get in some cheap bodies, or some resilient bodies, or some stuff that hangs around at the back and just sits on objectives and is really hard to shift.
Yeah, they're all just super solid, like really, really good. I think they are. Like, I mean, I love the aesthetic. I love the idea of them, and they are very martial. You don't really have any shooting.
No, practically zero.
Mobility is okay. There's Chaos Sorcerer does a lot for that. With you've been able to teleport, and you've got some fast stuff. You have like Manticores, and resilience wise, I think they're way up there with like some of the most
good. They also can do it. They've got brilliant ways to buff it, but without, it's not like they're who without the buffs.
Yeah.
You just turn up and your dudes, and anything else is a bonus. So if you just want to leave 10 guys back, they might just have, they got their champion with them. That's enough these days, possibly.
Innate mortal wound saves, anti-spell saves.
So good.
4-up armor, ways to get bonuses, inerrant bonuses if you've got a certain number of warriors in the unit for the Legions of Chaos rule. Okay, bravery, not too bad, not too good, but it's fine. They've got access to cheat bodies, screens, untamed beasts for pre-game moves. They've literally got everything except shooting. Like,
get that with that allies pool, I guess, via the if you wanted it that much.
But I mean, you can a little bit, but it's not even then. It's not. I mean, Chaos as a faction, unless you're playing Skaven, doesn't really have much.
Yeah.
You can get it with stuff like Soul Grinders, and you've got like, I think the Vortex Beast shoots or does something. I don't know. Never see it.
They ally with beasts.
Well, the beasts are but I think they're coalition now.
Okay, so you could have
allies, how it works.
You could have Ungor Raiders in there for dirt cheap if you wanted an option.
Yeah, but Untamed Beasts have got a couple shooting shots and they do the same job. So it's like I don't. You're not really playing Chaos if you're into shooting. I don't think so.
Nah.
If you want to shoot, then in Chaos, then you need to play Tzeentch or Skaven, basically. So,
yeah, somewhat comparable to Nurgle, I think, probably in the shape of their diagram.
Yeah, they are. I think they probably are a little bit more.
Yeah, it's just a squiggle on the edge. They're a bit less mobile, a bit more resilient, and a bit less objective capture.
Yeah, so I think they're very similar. I think their spells are very good. Again, you've got the issue with trying to get it off, but you can mitigate that by taking certain It's called Legion or Coven or whatever the term is. So yeah, I mean, I really like slaves. I think they're a solid army.
Classic aesthetic. Quite easy to paint an army up fast as well. The amount of, if you go down the armored route in particular, I'd say, and with those, you could dry brush it from dark silver to light silver, and then wash whatever that is, once or twice with like a green or blue or pink or whatever
or just Black Templar on the black armor, then put Snakebite on the gold, and then Griff Charger one coat on the, or Griff Charger grey for the steel or whatever. You suddenly got you suddenly paint by number, then just paint the cloaks red. Just and then put a wash on it. Super easy to do. Do a classic job or tint it in a colour in the direction of whichever god you prefer. So there's a way to get them on the table fast, reliably at a solid standard pretty easily. Great start collecting set. Yeah, really good. The Karkadrak, the Chaos Knights, the Chaos Warriors, really nice. They're a little bit more advanced modelling wise than the standard, but you can buy the older kits, which are a lot easier. Yeah, they are. Obviously, you got things like the Ogoroid and the all the Warcry warbands, and the things like the War Shrine and the Chaos Lord. It's just really nice kits. Super classic. Even so, classic's got a square base in the picture, so didn't notice that. There's a few coming. Don't worry when we get to classic. Good army, solid. I think competitive wise and depth of play, there's a lot there. Yeah, there's a lot there. It's a good starting army. If you're playing Chaos, if I was going into Chaos new now, unless I was particularly sold on one of the other gods, I would start with slaves because it's a good way to branch into everything. Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. Starting with the opposite end of the spectrum, and I will preface this is my opinion, and I know there are people out there that love Beasts of Chaos, but yeah, we'll get to it. But Beasts of Chaos, so they're a coalition army like slaves, so they can be joined in the other armies, but they're in a bit of a bad spot. But let's give you their blurb. So from the wildness of the wildness of the mortal realms they come, braying beasts intent on carnage and desecration. The beasts of chaos are monstrous hybrids of men and animals. Since the dawn of the realms, they have stalked the chaos-infused wild, slaughtering those foolish enough to venture beyond the boundaries of the known. When roused to war, they stampede into the civilized lands, spreading terror and corruptions as they soak the earth in gore. They are the true children of chaos, driven by instinctual hatred and feral fury. So it sounds really cool, and I love Beastmen from the old world. I will caveat this. It will sound a little bit down on these, and if you're excited about these, then if you still like the models and you're excited, that's fine. But just be prepared for a tough time at the moment. They might get some love in the future, but so they've got the Herdstone, which is really cool. It's like an aura that projects out and gets stronger and stronger as the game goes on. It's a cool piece of terrain. I really like the model. It also allows you to summon by sacrificing models, so then you can summon beasts to the battlefield. They've got this ambush rule, so you can come on for the board edges, a bit like the whole like the ghoul kind of type thing. It's quite good. They got the Blood Gorge, so the Minotaurs get, they got those rules. And yeah, they're just raiders basically. So they're like, they're ambushy raiders, guerrilla type fighters. They're kind of a bit of a horde army. I've put like low cunning because they're not very brave. But they lost a lot, honestly, with the loss of the battalions, because that's how you used to mark your army into different gods. They've lost a lot of that power. Yeah, you used to be able to have like a Khorne force or a Nurgle force or whatever. So they've gone full match play at least, and it's hurt them. And they needed a bit of a helping hand anyway. So they're just very average. They just need a new book. I'll be honest about it. They just, if you're starting Age of Sigmar, don't start with these. If you like the models, then just do another army and paint Beastmen for that army. because I mean, you might really like some of the Beastmen models, and that's completely fine, but they can go in as coalition units in any of the other armies. Yeah. And they get marked. So you could take like Minotaurs. If you really like Minotaurs, you could put them in a Khorne army, do a Khorne army, if you, I mean, you can do them, and I'm not saying don't do them, but they don't have a lot going for them right now. They don't have big characters. Struggle. They don't have. If you play inside their allegiance, you can't really put anything cool, like big and resilient in there. Their monsters aren't particularly good.
Not any particular power plays or like mega spells or big. Yeah.
They are in a really bad spot from play point of view. If you care,
if you were to do well with them, it would be spamming the board with dudes and playing extremely careful, calculated games around objectives. That's the only way that I can see them kind of being able to.
I mean, I just don't see them on the table. I think the last time I played
you'll see one to
Adepticon like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, you'll see 1 to 2 of them at a 100-player event, generally speaking. Somewhat similarly to a couple of armies at the moment. They just feel like their book's release was ages ago, which it was. So I guess it kind of makes sense. But a missed opportunity because, my God, the aesthetic of mental, weird, wacky, evil creatures is just such a wide open scope. I would love to see what was done with it.
I think they haven't really been AOSified yet.
No, they haven't.
They're the old range of models from before. I mean, some of the gauze and stuff is back from. I mean, I could talk about their radar diagram, but essentially not very good at anything. Average across the board. So it's not much that interesting to talk about. Model wise, pretty cool. But like the gauze are very old. I mean, I remember those back from must be 20 years, more than 20 years ago. Back when they were out, the original plastic gauze are still the same models. I think they got a little bit of a sprue update, but they got split for the ungauze. Herdstone, I think, looks amazing. And you've got like the Gorgon, Cygor. The Cygor's still got a square base in the picture because that's how old it is. And the Minotaurs are pretty cool.
If you want to do something that feels appropriate, do what Russ said, but then add in a giant. So you can have a great big 500-point thing that definitely does something. You can be in another army for some other people. Be careful about what size things you take. Get in some Minotaurs if you want, or a Cygor or whatever. A couple little skirmishy units, and then pop in some other bits and bobs. You can still do an army that plays in a thematic feeling fashion. It'd be quite a challenge to write that out. Actually, it'd be quite interesting. But you could do something with big Gribblies very easily. And
I think a War Stomper giant is a great. If I was playing Beast of Chaos, I would definitely take a Mega Gargant because I think it's a modern model. It's appropriate. It looks good. It kind of feels appropriate. The buff of the minus to hit is good in the army. I like Bestigor. I like Khorne. I like Minotaurs. I think the problem is a lot of the kits are fine cast or old. You've got chariots are old. I don't think they can still even have them. Like the
Chaos one and put some other stuff on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the Pumbaa Gore or the Razor Gore. It looks like Pumbaa from the Lion King with spikes on it and stuff like that. So it needs a bit of love. If you love Beastmen, and there are people out there that love it and they play them and they just play them, and if that's you, do it. I'm not saying don't play them if you love them.
Just be prepared.
Just be prepared.
An uphill battle.
If you're there and you don't mind and you're not particularly sold on them and you're like, well, I'm choosing between these 3, don't pick these.
Yeah.
If you want some Beastmen models, put them in another army.
Which people have got a particular stipulation to us writing a list that is like the type of thing we're describing, or trying to make one within Beastmen that we think would be the closest to something that we would take to an event or whatever. We're happy to pop some stipulations in the comment, and we will do our best and maybe cover it briefly on a future episode or something.
Yeah, and you can take Zangor, Enlightened and Skyfires in Beasts of Chaos. They're in the book because they've got the Bray Herd rule. So they can go in. So there are some good units. And when in the past, when Beastmen did well, it's because they were doubling down on Enlightened and things like that. So it's a shame. It's a shame.
It is. So for some models that are classic, old school, relatively unchanged in terms of their aesthetic, and have a huge plastic range to the same, but going to talk about Skaven, and I reckon Skaven hold up pretty well despite having one of the older books.
Yeah, and I've used the 1980s It was a 1990s cover from the army book, which was one of my first army books I ever had as the background.
Amazing.
So Skaven are very, very cool. Like I just caveat that right now. The background on them is amazing.
Awesome aesthetic.
They feel
fantastic models.
Yeah.
Different ways to build an army. If you want to have contraptions or beasties or hordes or not hordes, you can actually do an elite army fairly nicely. Russ and I are probably just going to go fanboy all over an army that neither of us have.
I used to. I even got my brother's old Doom wheel. I think I sold it, actually. So red eyes and chisel fangs glint in the gloom. A terrible chittering fills the air. Then from the darkness they come. The Skaven are a race of evil rat men. They seek to gnaw away at the roots of reality until they alone rule amidst the toppled ruins of the mortal realms. Arrogant, I can't even say it. Avaricious egomaniacs. The Skaven know nothing of loyalty nor courage. They overwhelm their foes with swarms of frantic warriors, arcane war engines, monstrous beasts, and weaponized plagues before falling upon one another to fight over the spoils.
They're such unique. They are. I think Skaven are one of the best things that the old world came up with, and because of what they are and how they're imagined in the old world, I don't think much needs to change about them in the new world, because there's always room for some sneaky people living underneath everyone else.
Yeah.
So and they just get to continue, right?
Yeah, and they're like they infight. You've got the Council of 13, and they infight, and they've got all this political machinations. But at the end of the day, they're cowardly. But being cowardly is seen as a strength. Like, why would you fight? They used to have this lead from the back, strength in numbers, and it's just they shoot into their own slaves. They don't care, and they've lost a lot of that in AOS. I feel they don't really feel like that anymore, but they still got that.
I played them recently, and they still did some pretty chaotic stuff, including overpowering something, getting it wrong, and then a 5-wound person doing 18 mortal wounds to themselves.
Yeah, I mean they do still have that kind of big risk, big reward, war machine, like warp lightning, mortal wounds.
Oh, they're amazing. They're so
spells
good.
and the bell kit. I mean the kits are great. We'll get into that, but yeah. So I'm sorry, Beastman players are not. Why isn't this you talk about our faction like this? Sorry. So Warpstone is their realm stone, their corrupted realm stone that they use, which is from the world that was as well. They've got gnaw holes. They've got this terrain which allows them to burrow through between the realms. They've got this like space between the realms, which is really cool. And they come out these little vortex portal type things.
Followed in the game too, just a good option to have that doesn't need spells or anything to pop through.
Yeah, I mean, great way to redeploy your shooting, your Giselles or something like that to shoot. They've got warped technology. So you've got like warp fire throwers, rattling guns, like storm fiends, warp lightning cannons, plague claw catapults. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. They've got loads of these weird and wacky inventions. Doom wheels. There you go. There's a cool mobile game if you're ever bored. And they got the strength in numbers. So the more of them, the braver they are, because they're pretty cowardly without that. From a gameplay point of view, very magic heavy, lots of bodies, kind of this mob mentality. They've got a lot of mortal wound output, and they're quite cunning. They've got this synergistic, but there is that risk that it all just falls to bits.
You can make it more likely that your stuff succeeds, but when it fails, there's a good chance that it properly fails and it blows you up. Not like, oh, I didn't get my spell off after spending a token, but oh, I failed. And now I might blow up, which is appropriate for them. But there's so many options for building a list. They've got their clans, which is like their chambers or whatever other equivalent. So you can go in different directions depending on whether you want to be, more Nurgly corrupted, or martial warriors, or more contraption based, or more strange weird creatures and Frankenstein monsters. And all of them are fairly viable. And then you've got the assassiny ones as well, which are always super cool.
Yeah, the sneakies. And when you want to talk in Skaven, you just got to repeat the word twice. You say die, and you call people man things or pink skins and things like that. So it's very cool. I think I really like the I really like the kind of the lore and the art and the aesthetic, and it goes a long way back to the 1980s. There's a lot of lore and a lot of old models and a lot of cool stuff. In terms of gameplay, they're obviously very good at magic. They're very good at shooting. Melee's a bit meh, depending, but you could do a Plague Monk army or a Storm Fiend army with a Warbringer, so you can make them fighty. Objective capture, they're a bit weird because they don't really stick around. They're not very resilient.
But they've got access to teleports for characters and moving through their gnaw holes. Their average movement is slightly higher than normal. If instead of 4s they got 6s or whatever, I think they get to automatically add 220 runs as well as some stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you can get stuff there. It's just,
and you can tunnel with your your Doom Flayers or whatever they're called, and also warp grinders and your Storm Fiend. So the army's flexible enough that you can be very. But I find once you're popped up, or you don't really move a lot because you're shooting and you're trying to
you've got to land with impact because you don't want to be impacted by the thing that's in front of you. Basically.
And warp fire projectors are pretty scary mortal wound output.
The
warp lightning vortex needs its own mention, really.
It does, I guess. The option for Unleash Hell has changed this army as well.
Oh, massively. Yeah.
If you're going to put 6 Storm Fiends in an army and 4 of them have got really good shooting, the fact that you might get to use that twice more in a game is actually a really big deal, or a consideration for your opponent.
And they become battle line as well.
Become battle line. You can give them +1 save reliably as well now. Special shout out to the power of their magic as well, because you can get rerolls for days. You can get buffs. Not only that, but it's like a lot of the chaos we've spoken about. But then you can get bonuses to cast pretty damn easily in this army everywhere. So it's much more easy to get off your high-powered spells than it is for pretty much everyone but Tzeentch in the entire Chaos faction, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. And the spells are very impactful and very scary.
Very good, yeah.
Of course, it does have a double-edged sword to it, because if you play against people who can shut magic down, it severely hurts you.
It does. You get half as good in one hot minute. If your stuff doesn't go off with Skaven, it's quite a good idea to have a way that you can play without committing to the plan that you were hoping to do. So if this doesn't go off and your Storm Fiends aren't going to be re-rolling hits and wounds or whatever, super strong thing it was, just being able to run some Clan Rats in the front, or, skitter leap in a Vermin Lord to tag a unit on the side so it can't come into you or something like that. Having a backup plan is always good, because there is a chance that your first plan won't work out, which is, again, extremely appropriate. I think it's one of the reasons that people like the army so much, is it both has an extremely strong narrative to it, and the rules and the narrative play really nicely without being too much or too little. So just kind of steady in the middle and very characterful.
I find to think that if you want to get the most out of them, you've got to use the sum of their parts. You've got to really combo stuff. If you just use the War Scroll as the War Scroll without the combos, it does feel a little bit lackluster. There are some exceptions, but if you just take the War Scroll rules and play them, if you're not using your magic or your buffs or your your other stuff around the edges to make the stuff better, it will feel less.
Yeah, I think a bit like Khorne, you've got to stick with them for a bit until you get it. And then when you do, perhaps you get to surprise people in the same fashion. I've seen them popping up and winning events way after they were the hot new thing when their book came out. And then every now and again, you'll just see someone appear and, take out second or first with them when people have just stopped thinking about them. So they still got power, they still got game, and they are super solid in the new edition, I would say.
In my opinion, they're in a good spot at the moment, because they're kind of like an army that no one's really looking at or focusing on, but I think they've got the potential to be good. So they kind of under the radar, to use a term. If you're into the competitive play, they're pretty good.
Absolutely. Should we chat about their models?
Yeah, I love them.
Do you want to take this one?
Storm Vermin, just amazing. Ikit Claw is one of my favorite characters. I just love the model. The Doom Wheel, classic. I love the when the Plague Claw, the Plague Furnace and Screaming Bell kit come out. They're just so high you had like the towers list where you had you had lots of them, and they were like they're so much bigger than any other kit. I mean, there's so many good models in the range. I haven't got Storm Fiends on there. I haven't got the Vermin Lord on there. I haven't got, just normal Clan Rats are good. The Rat Ogres. I mean, there's so many good models in the range.
You can paint them faster than you'd think as well. I think like you can all that wood and stone is a dry brush and a contrast away from being pretty much finished. All the glowy green bits, there's paint for that now. Plague monks, dawdle, just work out your method and repeat it.
Spray in brown, block in the pink, block in the red, block in the metals, put a brown wash over the whole model. Done. Like
dry brush nicely, loads variety. Yeah, absolutely. No, they're badass.
Then just airbrush big green glowy spots on them for the warpstone, and then your jobs are good.
And the best weapons in Warhammer as well, from like a properly loving them as a painter perspective. Just brilliant. So,
it's a great army. I'm really into them. I think I just think they look amazing. I love the Warbringer. They're not particularly the most competitive option, but I just love the aesthetic of that. The Storm Fiends and Storm Vermin. Sorry, it's Clan Verminus. I really like. So
absolutely been around for a fair bit as well. So if you're looking to get secondhand bargains or stuff like that,
plenty out there.
They're there for days.
Yeah, loads of the models on the market. If you want to go eBay and
in starter sets and stuff like that.
Yeah, loads kicking around. Just big fan of Skaven. I think there's definitely some lists. Been talking to Ricky a lot about his Storm Fiend list. And I know Sean's been using them over in Detroit and stuff. So it's definitely something I want to look into. I think it's an interesting
army.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting army. So that's it.
Biggie.
Oh, we're on the ratings. So
start
upsetting some people now. So
time to drop some bombs.
Okay, I'll caveat all of Chaos with one thing. Chaos are more complicated than any of the other allegiances because of the nature of Coalition, Wrath of the Everchosen, which we haven't spoken about, which is a book with extra rules in. You've got your beasts and your slaves Coalition rules. They are very bitty, is probably the way I would describe them.
Yeah.
With that comes great flexibility and power, but as a new player, it's daunting to understand.
I still find it faffy now. I really do.
So, FACEHAMMER rating, this is how many hammers, how many FACEHAMMERs out of 5, and this is it a good first army for Age of Sigmar? And this is comparing things like difficulty to play, accessibility, modeling, painting, gaming journey, affordability, all these things. So we'll rock straight in with Maggotkin of Nurgle at 4.5. Play well. You can play within the book. You don't have to go outside of it. Great models, easy to paint, fun,
to build, not too expensive,
not very complicated.
Yeah, loads of variety.
Great. Doesn't mean they're going to be really powerful. They are good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, solid, yeah.
But this isn't about how powerful they are in match play. This is about if you're a beginner, you're going down your club, or how easy is it going to be to get my models on the table, learn the army, enjoy it. Has it got longevity? Maggotkin are a great place to be. And on the flip side of that, we've got Hedonites at 2.
Complicated to build, paint, play, needs the other books more. So, you might have to reach outside of your battle tome to 4 other books to play it. Range of models is one of the best ranges Games Workshop have ever and will ever make visually. I'm not saying that they are to assemble or necessarily to paint. It can be a bit complex, but that knocks it out the park. So if you love that aesthetic, just go for it. And if you've got any questions about suggestions to make the army more forgiving for a beginner, then just let us know. But forgiving they are not on the table, or to build, or to paint, or to spend money on.
You don't have to put many models together to play an army, but you won't particularly have much. If you go like just demons, they're fairly easy to build and paint, but your army's not going to be very good.
Your army will be literally 1,500 points on the table. It'll feel like if you put demonettes in your starting force, they're 150 points each for some reason or something like that. So Yeah,
140,
not,
I think. Yeah, not great. So Hedonites are you kind of. I could have put them as a 1. I think the fact that you need to go outside their book, you 100% have to if you want to be. I mean, I know people would disagree with me, but I think you kind of need to if you want to go into a match play environment. If you don't want to, then you don't have to. But I think even club games, you're going to feel a little bit like you're up against the curve.
Yeah,
Models are complex, rules are complicated, they're not forgiving. They have got a good journey. They will make you a better player.
yeah.
So I will say
you can love them for 4 years, but you can't jump in there for 4 weeks and be like, I know everything that's going on.
and I think if you do go on the journey of Slaanesh, it will be rewarding, but it will be tough. And that's why it will be rewarding. So
Yeah,
I'm not saying don't do it. If you like it, go for it. See Byron's face. So go forward 8 months to time and see how haggard, how much grey hair Byron suddenly got, how haggard he is, how much he's kind of bemoaning the game. You'll know the journey. You'll see the scars of travel from the Slaanesh experience, or you'll be playing something else. No, I'm kidding.
So it's nice to back up an objectively very low rating with the fact that I choose to play this army. So we're not for a second saying that you shouldn't. It's just it's not as forgiving as others or as suggestible as others for your first one. If you want any help, if it is definitely going to be your first one, that's cool. Just let us know and we will sort you out.
Yeah, and we'll caveat this that no army is a don't start it, maybe with one exception. But I would say that if you're into it and you want to play it, any army is a good starting army. And I don't want people to think like we're bagging on anything. Blades of Khorne,
solid.
Solid. Good models, lots of them out there, lots on second-hand market. They're in the starter set originally. You can get lots of them very cheap. Easy to, not so easy to paint. They need a bit more effort than the Nurgle, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit more complex to play, a little bit less forgiving. That's why they're a little bit lower. But 3.5.
Quite helpful builds out there, though, if you wanted to go like Bloodthirsters and Fleshhounds, for example.
Yeah, those lists, they were more prevalent when the formations were a thing. Now the formations have gone away. They're not as good because the Khorne lost a lot of power, losing all of its. It had a lot of funky formations in the old game, which gave you loads of rules. They've all gone away, so they feel a little bit less.
Did gain about 300 points worth of stuff though, which is
they did gain. It's because it didn't go up much in points, which is a good thing, really.
Some of it went down, and you lost expensive formations. So still got gain. Yeah. Disciples next.
So
comparable to Hedonites.
It's a bit of a weird one because I don't think they're as bad from a play point of view, but you do have this tax that you're going to have to paint lots of horrors if you want to take horrors. So if you want to take 10 pink horrors, you pretty much have to paint 50 models. Yeah, which is a barrier. Yeah, so Tzeentch, like they're complex to play with. You require a bit of resource management. They probably won't win you many friends if you play them effectively. And they've obviously got some models are quite complex if you lean into those. And if you lean into demons, you probably need to paint quite a lot for the summoning and things like that. Yeah. Maybe they're not as bad as 2. Maybe they're a 3, but it's...
Yeah. I think the type of people who really like playing that type of army, you will start looking into them and you'll just know, and you'll be like, I love processes, I love planning stuff, I love working out combos, I love magic, I love spells. That could just be it.
I don't know why I don't play them.
or feathers. I mean, dry brushing feathers is brilliant, and the army can look amazing. So but not super duper easy. I guess onto another fairly frequently recommended one, which should be Slaves to Darkness. So why haven't you put these as high as the Nurgle Purgles then?
Purely because the models are a little bit less forgiving.
Yeah.
The starter sets actually, although they're easy to build, quote unquote, they're actually a little bit harder to paint and build because they're modern.
Yes.
Also, to unlock the power, you have to be a little bit more synergistic and aware of how stuff interacts, whereas Nurgle are just innately good.
Yeah.
Like you can just
do
put
objectives.
Them down but they're not far off. But
quite a lot of variety. You can fluff them each way you want in terms of God's allegiances or not. Bellacor's a thing. He's a nice new model. Can pop Archaon, obviously, Varangard. Plenty of options. You could do an all armored force super quick, like super duper quick, fairly affordably, and it still has good game on the table and participates in all phases but shooting.
Yeah, I think as well it's a little bit complex because you've got to decide, like, are you Everchosen, are you Kabbalist, are you Idolator, and then it fundamentally does shift a lot of your army. So, like, if you do Everchosen, Varangard, Archaon, yeah, it's viable, it's fine. But there's a lot of complexity about marks and interactions, and I just know that it's an in-depth book. Let's put it that way. Like,
then add Wrath of the Everchosen to it and all the other.
Yes.
Yeah, fair. Absolutely fair. Your point about Nurgle, you can just have this one book and then, download the scrolls for the new dudes and you are good to go.
I mean, Nurgle, you probably want to use Wrath and stuff like that, but it's not needed.
No, agreed.
I'm sorry. I'm going to get so much heat, aren't I? I know Beasts of Chaos are half a FACEHAMMER.
So the reasons we would say this, solid models, extremely old range though. The last time they had love was the Cygor. Well, I was disregarding their
7th edition
terrain piece, and their spells, which doesn't quite count, does it? Let's be honest.
So like they didn't really get any new models. They've got lots of fine cast stuff.
Not particularly effective shooting or magic.
You need lots of models to for an army. You need to paint a lot.
Yeah.
The models aren't particularly fun to build.
No, I feel quite an old school flat bits on flat bits experience. Yeah, I do like Bestigor. Got a big lot of love for the Bestigor. Yeah, and then they've got all these cool named monsters, and they have really, really old models for them, which could be incredible. And
the Chimera is good, but it's still Storm of Magic that come out, which was.
I've played with the Chimera. If someone touches it, it dies, and if you use it well, your opponent complains.
Yeah, because it just has mortal wounds, and they think it's too good. Yeah, so
and then they charge it with like 3 Witch Elves, and it's gone.
Again, this is just if you play pure Beast of Chaos. I think there's a lot of good Beast units to include in other Chaos armies, and I think it's a sorry state of affairs when you say Beasts are cool if you're not playing Beasts. But hopefully they'll get something in the future and be looked at because they need something. They don't feel particularly good. They don't have any of the cool stuff. They don't have like big cool stuff. They don't have like their monsters are all a bit mediocre and a bit pappy.
We're up for challenge there, guys. Give us some stipulations and we'll write you some lists.
No god level. It's gone. Dragon ogres are cool.
You could quite easily use their models and just count them as something else. If you wanted to count your Bestigor as Chaos Warriors, or paint them pink and use them as Slaaneshi things or something.
It's dirty. No proxy models. Not allowed.
Absolutely can. It's a creative hobby. Fill your boots.
It's in the FAQ. You can't do it.
Stop it. Shut up. None of that nonsense here. That's not what we're here for.
So yeah, Beast of Chaos. Again, caveat this: if they're the army you love, they're the army to play. They're the army to start. If you want us to do Beasts, do Beasts. Don't let me put you off. It's just be prepared for a tough journey, and it's going to be you're going to be when you play games you probably will struggle to win games. Let's just put it that way. It's just being honest.
If your mate's just picked up Lumineth and he's got 2 units of 20 archers and you've got a Beast of Chaos army, you will probably lose the game. They are just they are behind things. All right, then let's flip flop from that end of things straight to exactly in the middle. Why have you not given Skaven more out of interest?
Again, you've got lots of models you need to paint.
Yeah,
lots of old kits like resin, fine casty, metal type bits. Storm Fiends are actually quite tricky to build and paint, and things like that. And also from a gaming point of view, they're very techy. There's a lot of rules, a lot of interactions. Although it's self-contained and you need the FAQs, so it's kind of like it's all in one book. it's not.
That book is massive.
Yeah, it's so much in it.
Huge. When it first came out, it was the largest army book that had ever been in Age of Sigmar, and probably still is in terms of pages of rules and tables and things to consult and all that stuff.
And I think as a beginner, it's not a forgiving army. It's hard to learn. There's a lot of rules, and from a modeling point of view, they are lots of models, and they can be a little bit tricky to build and paint if you're not used to doing sort of Warhammer sort of style armies. They could be higher, they could be lower. Put them in the middle. Didn't really know. I think they're a good army if you want to play them. I like them. I think they're cool.
Absolutely. If you've got tips on how to paint them fast or anything, just let us know as well, and we'll give you some hacks, because there is definitely hacks with them.
Then we've got an 8 for bonus one.
An honourable mention for the people that were going to complain that we missed it out, and are going to complain even further because of that one FACEHAMMERs out of 5 that they've been given.
I would do it as
just because they're not a real book.
I'll do it as Legion of the First Prince, because it's got a question mark. So there is a thing called Legion of First Prince. It's Be'lakor's Legion. And people will say it does have a book. It's got Broken Realms Be'lakor. It's a couple pages in Broken Realms Be'lakor, and it requires you to take demons of any demon, and you can mix and match. And there's some FAQs on it, I think, where they've changed some bits around as well. If you go to the GW website and you go, show me all the Chaos factions, there is no tab for it. So as a beginner, you probably don't even know it exists. Yeah. This is why it's one. Because
if you want to go on a research journey and work it out, it is there, and you can ask some people, ask in our forum, on our Discord in the Chaos List forum. Yeah, some people, definitely. Some people point you in the right direction, but yeah.
So it has a few pages, it's still good. I mean, it's a good army. It just podiumed an event, but I would say it's an advanced faction.
Oh, it's going to be confusing. Even explaining why you're allowed to do what you do in it, and what you can include, and what your restrictions are that aren't in those 2 pages and stuff like that. A little bit of a journey of learning for people.
I think it's quite easy to make errors where you would actually have an illegal army. And I think that because of that, it's not beginner friendly. That's just my 2 cents. I think you have to play it in a very techie way, using things from multiple battle tomes, using synergy that probably isn't obvious but works.
I wouldn't. If someone's still on their journey to learning how Age of Sigmar works, I would 100% agree that this is, just play Slaves to Darkness for a bit, and once you've done that, then look at this. Yeah. And a good thing about this, if you do go into Legion after Slaves with Be'lakor, then you go into Legion, then that gives you lots of demons. They could be all your summoning pools. 50% of 5
which
other
then
armies
allows you to
whatever.
then dip dive into the others, or mix your Slaves and your demons together to be Hedonites or Nurgle or Tzeentch. So if you want to stay within a faction and get a really good economy of model collection, Chaos is great, because beasts and slaves can go in the other factions. Yeah. Your demons from Legion can go in the others. The only exception to that is Skaven. They're kind of standalone, but within their own book, they've almost got 5 Chaos gods in one with all the clans. Yeah. So you kind of get the Chaos feel in one book.
Yeah, you do. They're their own little world. Yeah, exactly.
So again, if you want to start with Legion of the First Prince, not a problem. Paint your demons, get your Be'lakor.
We'll explain it.
The rules are available. You can get the Be'lakor book. You can get the rules in there. You've got the FAQ. You can go on that journey. There's plenty of people that do it, but I just think it's a little bit more advanced and a little bit more techie. And what worries me, because there isn't a battle tome Legion of the First Prince, is it going to go away in another handbook? Is it going to be a thing that disappears like Legion of Grief?
Or will it evolve into something else? Set of models,
or will it get FAQ'd to change, or what? So, because Legion of the First Prince was about in Wrath of the Everchosen, and then this book changes it, and then armies that were legal in Wrath are no longer legal in this book. So, at your own risk, that's all I'm saying. I don't know anything. I'm not I'm not telegraphing anything. I'm just saying, until it, for me personally, as a beginner, I would avoid it, because get a normal, I'll use the term loosely, proper army first. And then,
it's like playing a White Dwarf something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like your Dogs of War from 6th edition in 7th edition with your Ravening Halls update. Is it going to be there? We don't know. Is it going to be changed? We don't know. Is it going to get a book? We don't know. Yeah. But the models won't be useless, because obviously you can use them in other armies. But I wouldn't start with it as a beginner. That's why it's 1. It's not a bad army. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying it's not a viable army or it shouldn't be in tournaments or anything. I'm saying it's just, as a beginner, it's a 1 for me.
Agreed. Yeah. Solid.
Agree, disagree, put it below. I'm fine. I'm happy. Any contrary opinion is completely fine, because we're not saying that we're right, you're wrong, or we're the God's level thing. This is just our opinion. So end of the day, it's like, they're like bumholes, right? Everyone's got one, and they don't always have to be the same. So it's fine. So happy to have a debate on it or a conversation about it. It's fine. But I'm not trying to put people off. But if you don't know what it is, and you've gone on the Games Workshop, walked around the Games Workshop to look at all the battle terms, you won't know what it is. You wouldn't have seen it. If you go on the website and you go all Chaos armies, there's not even a listing on there, so you won't know it exists. So that's why it's got a question mark, because where is it? I don't know. It's somewhere. But yeah, that's my. But Chaos is a bitty faction, so
it is a bitty faction, absolutely. But wide open, and once you start it, you could be playing Chaos for the rest of your life and be 50% of the way to your next army, your next army, your next army, your next army, which is one of the appeals of it, I think, for a lot of people.
And if you want to know power level, they're all pretty much up there, apart from the beasts. They're really good. Like you're not going to struggle. Hedonites are okay, but they like I said, we talked about those enough.
Yeah,
but
you don't turn up expecting to win, but you can give it your best shot.
Yeah, but Slaves, Skaven, Legion of the First Prince, Tzeentch, Nurgle,
Maggotkin,
Blades of Khorne, they're all competitive. They're all good. I say like Blades and Hedonites probably the middle tier. You can check our tier show. Don't want to do it now, but yeah. So hopefully this was useful for beginners. This gives you an idea. We've got other videos on the other factions. Got one more to do on Order, so the non-pointy ear ones. Let us know what you think below, if this has inspired you to start anything or put you off. Sorry, Beastmen players. And check out our channel if you want to go through the core rules. We've got a video series on that if you want to sort of go through the rules, learning the game. We do live streams. We've got a Discord. Join there, ask your questions. We sort of do match play content, review battle tomes. We do tournament reports where we actually take pictures and videos and we explain the analysis of what happened and why and what decisions we made. So join us on the journey, subscribe, like this video, all that kind of stuff to get other people to notice. Yeah. Tell your friends.
And if you do feel disheartened and you have a query, put it below and we will answer it. And if you want us to, you're like, no, I definitely want to collect this and I love armies that do a lot of shooting or whatever, put it down and we will do our best to write you a list or give you some knowledge or some help.
Yeah, but like I say, it's always the rule of cool is king. So if you think beasts are the coolest thing ever, go ahead, collect them. You'll have fun. Don't worry. This is not a definitive be all end all. It's just please consider these things before making your decision on your purchase, because an army is a big investment and of time and money. So it's important to understand.
You'll only finish it if you enjoy it.
Exactly. You're only going to finish what you love. So don't collect Maggotkin of Nurgle because we gave it more stars, even if you don't like them, because you're never going to do them then. So I'm not sure no one would, but that's just the point.
Sweet. Thanks for joining us, guys. We will catch you in the next episode.
Yeah, cheers. Have a good one. See you all later.
In a bit. Bye.